What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and today I again invite you to sit down, chill out, get a cool beverage and a tasty snack, and let me talk at you for a minute. Today I'd like to talk at you about Stargrave Hope Eternal. This is a relatively new solo supplement for Stargrave. And for the most part, I have the same opinions about art and layout that I have about the Stargrave book. I love the art. It's, just good quality sci-fi art. And I think the book is laid out in a matter that makes sense. Some books you feel like you gotta kind of jump around to find everything. It feels like everything is in a nice just order that makes sense and things are grouped together in a good way. So, points. And as should be, first thing in the book is your crew. If you're playing by yourself solo, you build your crew just like you normally would. If you're playing co-op, which this does provide for, and you bring a friend along, then you use what are called half-size crews. In a half-size crew, you create your captain by creating a first mate. That took me so many times to get out of my mouth, y'all. It's ridiculous. You create your captain by making a first mate and then immediately give them 7 levels. So you're going to get some bumps and some upgrades. And then they get the normal 6 gear slots that a captain would have. You then get 200 cred to spend on 4 crew members, 2 of which may be specialists. Now, because it is solo co-op, the turn phase is a little bit different than in the regular version of Stargrave. In this, it goes captain phase, first mate phase, creature phase, soldier phase. And instead of the normal 3 companions that you would get to activate during those phases, you only get 2. However, the normal rule of those models having to be within 3 inches in line of sight is out of the window here. You can activate during the captain phase, you get your captain, and then 2 crew members that are anywhere on the board. First mate phase, first mate, 2 crew members that are anywhere on the board. Don't have to be in line of sight, no range restrictions, none of that. So in that aspect, it plays more like Rangers, which I like. I think that's good. Now I've yet to play like head-to-head Stargrave with somebody, so I think that in that, I think the within 3 inches in line of sight is a cool feature. I think it's a cool mechanic that I'm kind of excited to play around with whenever I get around to getting an opponent over here and having the time to play the game. Now, because I haven't played head-to-head yet, I'm not completely familiar with the AI algorithm that it uses. But this book has its own creature priority list. And it goes, is the creature in combat? If it is, then it fights. And it'll always stay in combat like creatures do. If it doesn't, then you go to number 2, which is, does it have a crew member in sight? If it does and it has a missile weapon, it'll take a shoot. It'll take a shot, and then it'll move to cover or try to get out of line of sight. If it doesn't have a crew member in line of sight, you go to number 3, which says that if it has the missile weapon and if it can get a crew member into range and line of sight, then it will move and take the shot. If it cannot, then you'll go to number 4, where it will either move to the target point designated by the scenario, or it'll move in a random direction, which I do it by rolling a D10 and then moving it however many inches in the direction that the D10 points. But there's a billion different ways to determine a random direction. That's just how I like to do it. Next, you go into like the in-game sequence, which the normal in-game, as far as like your death and injury rolls and all that stuff, you do it from the regular core book. However, your experience table works a little bit differently. You don't get experience the same way you do as in the regular version of Stargrave. So for each game that you played with the crew, you get 30 XP. If the crew had at least one person reduced to 0 health, you get 30 XP. And then you get 10 XP for every power that your captain or first mate gets off, up to a maximum of 100 XP. And next it moves right into the campaign overview. So the campaign is 10 scenarios that are broken down into 3 chapters. And each of those chapters tells is like an arc of the story, a section of the story. So in the beginning, you start off by getting hired by some mysterious backers to get some data and then to do some other dirty work around the system. The system is the word I'm looking. And I don't want to give too much away, but over the remaining chapters, you search out someone who's the last living operator from a space station, and then eventually you make it to said space station, and shenanigans ensue. And then we come into the scenarios, which as of filming this, I've played the very first scenario 5 or 6 times. Because I'm new to Stargrave. I'm very familiar with Rangers, but this is not, the exact same. It's one of those things where it's just similar enough to make you overconfident and thinking you know what you're doing. So I tried to play through that first scenario several times, very, very slowly, and just make sure that I'm understanding as much as possible. I filmed it twice because the first time I filmed it, I got it to editing, and I was like, well, I didn't explain any of what I was doing. So I should probably do that. Anyways, my experience thus far is that at least the first scenario is tough. Like it is balls to the wall, bonkers, tough. It worked me over several times in the course of me. And I'm sure part of that was just me not knowing what the heck I was doing or how to utilize the board and the rules best to my tactical advantage. But even on the last playthrough, which I did fairly well, I did better than any of them. I still, the whole time I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm gonna make it here. So it's got a pretty solid difficulty bar, I'm assuming, probably for the rest of the campaign, which I'm here for. I think it's going to be a challenging and fun experience. Now, terrain-wise, some of the scenarios have some pretty specific terrain needs. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I have 3D printers as well as just a large collection of terrain. So some of the stuff here, and you'll see me if you actually watch the playthroughs, which will be in a playlist over there somewhere. Hopefully I'll remember to put that card in. And I will, in a heartbeat, like if I have something that is close enough, I will just sub that in. But you can do cut out pieces of paper or cardboard or foam board or whatever, or you can print things, or you can model things, or you can try to find and buy things that fit that. But I'm one to where if I have a piece of terrain that is pretty close to what the scenario calls for, I'll just go with it, and that's what I'll use, and that works for me. But there's definitely, like, if you want to have like an immersive board, like there are some pretty wide and varied terrain demands that the game could require of you. So just that's something to be prepared for. As with any of Joe's games, there's always the only exception there was I would say would be Silver Bayonet, because the Silver Bayonet has very kind of generic terrain requirements. Trees, mausoleum, random farmhouse. It's pretty basic, but like Rangers has some pretty intense terrain demands. Now again, you don't have to be extra like me and build a 3-foot wall stair mountainside. I did it because I like immersive boards. It's what gets me off. It's what gets my goose. That's part of what I'm here for. Like having that sweet, just good table is about half the fun of the game. And then a quarter of the fun is moving the models and a quarter of the fun is rolling the dice. But I say that because even if the moving the models and the rolling the dice is fun, like if you don't have at least some type of terrain, and for me anyways, y'all are free to game however you please, it detracts from the whole experience for me. And so just be aware that's something to consider as far as your play style and how you like to enjoy games and how deeply you like to go down that immersion rabbit hole. There are a few new rules in the game, such as underwater, I suppose this is different than swimming, like just regular swimming because you're down under the ocean, which terrifies me because water in Mr. McCullough's games is, well, it's terrifying. So we've got some rules for like breathing underwater, moving underwater. When you jump underwater, your distances are doubled. No falling damage underwater. Swimming rolls are not required for your normal movement, but may sometimes be still called upon with things like strong currents and stuff. And then amphibious or aquatic creatures count as having the flying ability when they're underwater. And then we've got some rules for combat, shooting, carry out. We've got some new rules for high radiation, which is that whenever a figure activates in a high radiation zone, it immediately suffers a point of damage, unless it is shielded. If a figure falls below 8 health while unshielded in a high radiation zone, it is immediately poisoned. And crew members have the option to wear a radiation suit. If it's worn over armor, it causes a -1 fight penalty. And if you suffer any damage, your suit is ruptured and then it's no longer sealed. In the next chapter, we go into some advanced technology. So this is our loot and stuff. We got canine laser. Oh, it's a laser you can put on your dog. Dang! I've got a sci-fi dog model. I want a dog with a laser on it so bad now. It's all I'm going to be able to think about. But other things include... Oh, wait, hold on. That wasn't on the loot table. That was something different. But you got emergency grapples, data transmitters, bionic eyes, displacer. Oh, no, canine lasers on there, plasma displacer. All of the various sci-fi goodies that you're going to find scattered across the ravaged galaxy. And then we come to the bestiary, where we've got snakes, barbarians. Now, I don't remember who it was on Instagram that I saw do this, but a while back I saw someone take some a barbarian kit, I want to say from Oathmark maybe, and kit bashed it with one of the Stargrave crew kits to make like techno barbarians. And it was super sweet. So that's something that I may be considering for myself for the future. I wish I could remember who it was that I saw do that conversion, because I would love to be able to give them credit for it. I'll never remember. Never ever, unfortunately. After the bestiary, we come to a few new attributes, which are Alpha Predator. It's a dominant predator in its environment and will always activate first in the creature phase. Immune to radiation. Never suffers any damage from radiation, like your rad roaches, stuff like that, you know. Non-lethal. If it's reduced to 0 health by the figure, does not have to roll for recovery after the stop to eat. If it reduces an opponent to 0 health in combat, it will spend its next activation tearing up its victim and devouring it. Victim suffers an additional -1 to its survival roll. And then we've got Terror. All these sound like dinosaur abilities. I love it. Terrifying Roar. If this figure unleashes a bellowing roar before it charges. Whenever it activates, it will roar, and all crew members within line of sight of the creature must make a will roll. Target number 14. If they fail, they suffer -2 fight in the following activation. That's pretty scary. And that brings us to the end of the book. So overall, I am thoroughly excited with this. I want to say it was between 20 and 30 bucks. I don't remember the exact number because it's been a while since I bought it. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be tough, but I think that the story of it and that challenge are going to be a good payoff in the end, especially since you can just hire in new certain crew members for free. It's just I just have to not let myself get attached to them, because I do. I get attached to my little people and their goings and their comings and their feelings that I make up for them. and then when they die, I'm like, oh man, dang. So needless to say, I'm excited. I'm also very excited for this because, as I mentioned earlier, like I don't necessarily off-gate have an opponent to come play the regular version of Stargrave with, and I've had the rules for Stargrave for a while now, and this gives me an opportunity to get it on the table by myself and at least learn the system so that when I do find an opponent I can accurately and appropriately and efficiently show them how to play the game. Unless, of course, I'm lucky enough to find someone who already knows how to play the game. Now, that being said, again, the model requirements I don't think are in too terribly intense, especially if you already have a pretty established collection of sci-fi models / fantasy models, because in my opinion, anything that's a fantasy model can be a sci-fi model, because the universe is infinitely expanding outwards, and if it's in infinite space, then there's an infinite amount of probability. Even if the probability is 1 in a million there's going to be a planet, there's an infinite number. So you're going to hit planets that are at varying levels of civilization and, whatever, their interpretation of the universe's magic or what have you. So in my opinion, any fantasy model can be a sci-fi model. So the model demands I don't think are too intense. However, the terrain demands, if you want to have a fully developed and immersive table, might be a bit intense. Now, if you're perfectly happy with making some cutout floor plans or whatever and doing all that, boom, you're set. You're going to be good to go. You're going to have a great time. I'm going to have a great time too. I'm just going to have to do a little bit of extra work, but that's okay, because I don't have to do it. I want to do it. It's an opportunity to do a thing that's going to be cool. And if you're not trying to do cool stuff with your toy soldiers, then I don't know what you're doing with your toy soldiers. So thanks so much for stopping by, hanging out, and letting me talk at you for a little bit about Stargrave Hope Eternal. If you've enjoyed this sit down and talk, please consider hitting the like, subscribe, bell notifications, all that good stuff. If you'd like to support me, check out the link to Patreon or Redbubble. Get yourself some cool channel swag along with some other random designs that my weird little brain poops out sometimes. And even if you don't do any of those things, I love you to death, and I'm so grateful that you stopped by and hung out and let me talk at you today. And I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server, talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in your favor.